Lieutenant Mark Davis was no stranger to danger. A combat diver in the Navy SEALs, Mark had trained for years to operate where silence and darkness ruled. From freezing Arctic waters to murky river bottoms in hostile territories, he had faced it all. But nothing in his experience prepared him for the night he was sent beneath the surface of the most notorious compound in the world. It was May 2nd, 2011. The raid on Osama bin Laden's compound in Abbottabad, Pakistan, was underway. The world would later remember the thunderous helicopter assault, the precise ground attack, and the end of a decade-long hunt. But few would ever know what happened below the surface, inside the flooded basement of the compound, where Mark's mission was about to begin. The night was thick with tension as Mark and his team approached. The air was warm but heavy, carrying the scent of earth and dust. Around them, the sounds of helicopters echoed and distant gunfire crackled faintly. But Mark's world narrowed to a singular focus: his dive gear, the dark water awaiting him, and the secret task he had been given. His orders were simple, yet critical. After the raid's primary objectives, Mark was to dive into the compound's basement pool and retrieve any sensitive equipment that might compromise national security if left behind. What exactly was down there, no one knew. Official briefings were vague, leaving Mark with nothing but his training and instincts. Securing his breathing apparatus, Mark took a deep breath. His fingers were steady despite the adrenaline. He slipped silently into the water. The cold was immediate and biting. Murky shadows enveloped him as he descended. His flashlight cut through the darkness, revealing broken tiles, debris, and the skeletal remains of old pipes. The water smelled stale, tinged with rust and mildew. Every movement had to be precise. One wrong step could mean disaster. Mark scanned the basement with practiced efficiency, his eyes searching for anything unusual. The mission was not about combat now, it was about recovery. But beneath the surface, he felt an unease stirring, a whisper of something hidden. After what felt like an eternity underwater, his gloved hand brushed something solid and cold, a heavy metal container, sealed tight with unfamiliar symbols etched into its surface. It was not on any manifest he had seen. He hesitated briefly, fingers tracing the edges before securing it carefully. Orders were clear: retrieve and surface immediately. Breaking through the water's surface, Mark was met by the sharp voices of his team and the steady hum of the helicopter. The container was quickly locked away, its contents a mystery to everyone but a select few. Days later, the official reports praised the success of the operation. Bin Laden was dead. Terror had suffered a decisive blow. Yet, there was no mention of the container or the strange energy Mark felt it carried. Mark's mind refused to rest. The weight of that metal box seemed to anchor itself to his thoughts. Why had it been hidden? What secrets did it hold? And more unsettling, why was everyone suddenly avoiding any questions about it? Unable to let go, Mark began to dig deeper. Official debriefs were tightly controlled. Files were encrypted or redacted. Strange anomalies appeared in classified logs. Missing timestamps, erased entries. A pattern emerged, one of silence and concealment. It wasn't long before Mark noticed he was being watched. Black SUVs tailed his movements through the streets. Unknown faces lingered at the edges of his vision. His phone buzzed with calls that never connected, leaving only static. Friends who had shared his suspicions began to disappear. Accidents, suicides, sudden transfers. The line between ally and enemy blurred. Trust was a currency Mark no longer had. As paranoia tightened its grip, Mark realized he was no longer just a diver on a mission. He was a man caught in a web of secrets that stretched far beyond the raid. What he held in his hands, the metal container, was a key to a hidden truth that some would kill to protect. The mission beneath the surface was over, but the real dive, the plunge into darkness, betrayal, and fear had only just begun. The days after the raid felt surreal to Mark Davis. The world celebrated, but for him, every moment was heavy with questions. The sealed container, locked away in a secure facility, became a silent obsession. Its existence was denied by everyone in command, yet Mark knew what he had seen. Unable to shake the feeling that something vital was hidden, Mark began quietly reviewing mission logs and reports. Official documents glossed over details, focusing solely on the elimination of Osama bin Laden and the destruction of weapons caches. But subtle irregularities caught his attention. Missing entries, encrypted communications that vanished without explanation, and files flagged as top secret with no clearance for him to access. Mark was no stranger to classified information, but these gaps didn't feel routine. They felt deliberate. When he tried raising questions through his chain of command, he was met with vague reassurances or cold silence. One officer even warned him to stay in his lane. Frustrated but undeterred, Mark reached out to a trusted friend from the National Security Agency, an analyst named Emily Chen. Emily was brilliant, with a knack for decoding encrypted data and a reputation for discretion. In a quiet cafe, far from prying eyes, Mark and Emily met. He laid out what he knew and what he suspected. Emily's fingers danced over her laptop keyboard as she ran checks on the encrypted logs. "These files aren't just deleted," she said, voice low. "They've been actively scrubbed. Someone doesn't want this data seen." Mark's jaw tightened. But why? What could be so dangerous it has to be erased? Emily hesitated. "I'm digging, but there are whispers about another operation that ran alongside the raid. Something involving tech recovery, communications disruption. But there's no official record." The revelation sent a chill down Mark's spine. If true, the mission had layers no one had disclosed. Over the following weeks, Mark sensed eyes watching him more closely. His movements were shadowed by unmarked black SUVs, and strangers lingered near his home. Phone calls came from unknown numbers, silent with only static on the line. Then came the warnings. A note slipped under his door read, "Stop digging, or you'll disappear like the others." Mark knew the message wasn't idle threat. His paranoia deepened as friends who had once spoken openly with him about the container began dying in sudden accidents or falling mysteriously silent. A teammate's car swerved off a mountain road in what was ruled an accident. Another vanished after reporting suspicious activity. Mark's world narrowed. Every shadow was suspect. Every face could be a foe. Determined not to be silenced, he doubled down on his investigations with Emily. Together, they uncovered fragments of data revealing that the sealed container might hold a highly advanced communication device, technology stolen from an earlier failed operation, capable of intercepting enemy transmissions globally and disrupting their networks. The implications were staggering. This was not just about eliminating a terrorist. It was about controlling information warfare itself. But with every new lead, the net closed tighter. Mark knew that his closest handler, the man who had trained and guided him through countless missions, might be involved in covering up the truth. The betrayal cut deeper than any wound. Now Mark was alone. The mission beneath the surface was no longer a secret operation. It was a deadly game of cat and mouse, and Mark was running out of time. Mark Davis's world was unraveling. What began as subtle warnings had escalated into direct threats. The thin line between allies and enemies had blurred beyond recognition. The people he once trusted were vanishing or turning their backs, and shadowy figures seemed to lurk behind every corner. One evening, as Mark left a meeting with Emily Chen, he noticed the familiar hum of an engine behind him, a black SUV tailing at an unnerving close distance. His heart pounded as he weaved through side streets, attempting to lose them. But the vehicle matched his every turn. Panic surged as headlights blazed behind him, then abruptly dimmed when he took a sharp alley. He seized the moment and disappeared into a crowded marketplace, blending into the throng. That night, Mark lay awake, haunted by the idea that his time was running out. His friends were dying. His every move was watched. The mission, once a proud chapter of his life, had become a nightmare. Worse still, the knowledge he carried was a poison no one wanted unleashed. Mark reached out to a network of investigative journalists and hackers, people who thrived in the shadows and weren't afraid to expose secrets. Through encrypted channels, he shared fragments of what he knew: the existence of the container, the missing files, the advanced communication technology hidden within. The responses were cautious but intrigued. Some warned of powerful forces at play. Government agencies, foreign intelligence, and rogue operatives all intertwined in a web of deception. Mark's investigations uncovered chilling truths. The container held a device capable of intercepting and manipulating enemy signals worldwide. A technology stolen during an earlier covert mission that had gone catastrophically wrong. But even worse was the betrayal within his own ranks. His closest handler, the man who had sworn loyalty to him and their cause, was complicit in the cover-up, feeding intelligence to foreign agents and orchestrating the silencing of those who knew too much. One evening, Mark barely escaped an assassination attempt. Gunfire erupted outside his safe house. In a desperate bid, he fled into the night, evading pursuers by mere seconds. The stakes had never been higher. Mark realized that survival meant going completely off the grid, abandoning his identity, his life, and the career he had built. Every connection could be a liability. Every whisper of information could lead to death. Yet even in the darkest moments, Mark clung to one truth: the world deserved to know the real story. The mission beneath the surface had uncovered more than a terrorist. It had revealed a weapon hidden in plain sight, a device powerful enough to shift the balance of global power. Now, with shadows closing in, Mark Davis was fighting not just for survival, but for the truth. The night was thick with tension as Mark Davis prepared for what might be his final move. Government farces were mobilizing, media blackout orders had gone out, and the net was tightening. But Mark was determined. The truth about the raid, the container, and the advanced technology it held could no longer be buried. He coordinated with a trusted journalist, someone willing to risk everything for the story. Together, they planned a public reveal: documents, recordings, proof of the hidden mission and the betrayal that followed. But before they could act, the shadowy handlers struck. A raid on Mark's safe house forced him into a desperate escape through rain-slicked streets and dark alleys. The city blurred past as he fled, every step dogged by unseen enemies. In a final confrontation, Mark faced the man he once trusted most, his handler, now revealed as the architect of the cover-up. Words were exchanged, a bitter mix of accusation and regret. But the truth was clear. Some secrets were too dangerous to share. Faced with impossible choices, Mark vanished into the shadows. Some say he fled the country, others that he went underground, continuing his fight in silence. The mission beneath the surface had lifted a veil on a secret far greater than anyone had imagined. The retrieval of a weaponized communication device with the power to alter global power balances. Today, that secret remains hidden in classified vaults, guarded by those who understand its deadly potential. Mark Davis's story is a reminder. Beneath the surface of history's greatest moments lie untold truths, shadows that shape the world we live in. And sometimes, the deepest secrets come with the highest cost.